are the due to technology. We all were facing network issues today due to which we couldn't get connected. कभी किसी का जा रहा था तो कभी किसी का जा रहा था. I'm so sorry for that. And welcome to yet another enlightening webinar brought to you by Aisha Support Foundation under Visit MHP initiative. This is in collaboration with Career Naksha. At ICHAS, we are committed to empower coaches, mental health practitioners to contribute to a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling world. We achieve this by providing comprehensive step by step training that equips them with advanced coaching and therapeutic skills. This in turn enables them to better serve their clients while achieving their professional and personal aspirations. This webinar is proudly brought to you by ICHAS Support Foundation, an integral non profit branch of ICHAS under their Visit MHP initiative. Core mission of ICHAS Support Foundation revolves around promoting mental health, case, creating awareness, providing support, and offering education. We firmly believe that by enhancing public awareness, educating communities, and providing individuals with the right tools, we can foster optimal mental health for all. ICHA Support Foundation has initiated the Visit MHP Challenge, an inspiring initiative by mental health practitioners, encouraging individuals to seek help proactively before it becomes too late, and also acting as a peer learning support community for practicing psychologists and psychology students in India, whereby we hold regular case discussion sessions second Tuesday of every month, 6:30 p.m., to help psychologists and psychology students develop problem solving and analytic skills. We have started a subsidiary counseling service for students of psychology dealing with psychological problems such as stress, anxiety, depression, or any other emotional difficulty. Through a subsidiary drive, you can access counseling service from qualified professionals who specialize in mental health and psychological well being. You can fill the form given in the chat box or visit mhp.com and book your first free discovery session. Under the Visit MHP initiative, we also have additional learning resources like worksheets, pre recorded courses, and more. Every month, we host webinars and workshops on various psychology related topics. Keep an eye on our website and social media channels for announcements about webinars and workshops. Today's webinar is made possible through our partnership with Career Naksha, a valued collaborator in the field of career counseling. Joining us is Huma Sufyan, my co-host from Career Naksha, and Vedangi, an esteemed guest who will provide valuable insights on embracing resilience, overcoming the fear of failure. Thank you for joining us in this journey of knowledge and growth. We hope you find this webinar both enriching and enlightening. I would now like to invite Huma to provide an introduction to Career Naksha. Over to you, Huma.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I'm Huma Sofyan. I'm Community Manager with Council of India and Career Naksha. And very congratulations to all psychologists, all professionals who are in this field that we are together now with Aisha's too. So, a small introduction about the Career Naksha. So, Career Naksha is an ethic startup based out of Vadodara, Gujarat, graduated from MS University, Baroda, run by alumni from IIT, IIMs, VIT, MSU, along with world's leading career psychologists, HR professionals, and industry experts. Career Naksha provides modern, personalized, data-driven, psychometrics-based career counseling and development platform to schools and colleges students, graduates, and early professionals too. We have already helped 15,000 plus schools and colleges students in finding their right career path in the last 5 years with the help of scientific method and tools like psychometrics and personalized counseling. Our outreach and coverage, we have touched more than 10 lakh students across India digitally via all our social media channels and completed 150 hours of counseling and expanded our mentors counselors network of 4,000, more than 4,000 in diverse areas. So again, Career Naksha provides a personalized data-driven psychometrics-based career counseling development platforms to school as well as colleges, as I mentioned. It has specialized focus on tier 3 cities and beyond. So the test helps the students recognize their aptitude, capabilities, and interest. Career Naksha developed the psychometric test, taking into account the ONET framework and Indian context, and then it was published their research and commercialized the psychometrics from school standards to professionals. Career Naksha is also partnered with Council of India. The CCI, this is Council of India, is a non-profit scientific and educational wing, was founded by Dr. Divakar sir in 2011 and has its aims to promote human well-being and mental health support and career counseling in India by research and practice of psychology. And now we are collaborated with Aisha. This is all about Career Naksha, CCI and Aisha. Thank you, ma'am.
So, not taking too
Over.
much time, I think I would like to leave the stage to Vedangi to go ahead and give us some really good insights on overcoming the fear of failure. Over to
Okay.
you, Vedangi.
Thank you, Kiranji. So I'm Vedangi, and I'm a mental and emotional well-being therapist, and I specialize in burnout management. So one thing that I've seen commonly with the people that I deal with the clients that come to me, is that they face a certain fear of failure, which often hinders their progress. So here I am, like I chose this topic so that budding psychologists and psychology students, they can learn how to deal with this fear of failure, which is present in everybody who is aspirational, who has certain aspirations or wants to achieve something in their life. At some point or the other, they often face the fear of failure, and so this is my take on how I deal with my clients, and I hope that my fellow psychologists and psychology students can learn something from this webinar. So let me first start by discussing. So let's start with the discussion about what is fear and how is it different from anxiety. So anxiety and fear are often people often use use these two words interchangeably, but we need to realize that there's a as a psychologist we need to realize that there's a difference between fear and anxiety. So when we're talking about anxiety, it's the unwanted or the irrational worries about something that is not immediately threatening us, whereas a fear is something that it's about the irrational fear of something or irrational worries about something that is there in the present that is threatening us. So the difference between anxiety and fear comes from the fact that a fear is something which is more tangible. So you might be fearful of snakes, let's say, so it's more tangible. If you see a snake, only then you'll be fearful. You'll not be like, fearful, oh, snakes exist in the world, so you're fearful. That will not happen. But in case of anxiety, what happens is that we are worried about something that is more abstract, that may not be even present in the present moment. So let's say if I'm fearful about what will happen in my exam. So that is anxiety, right? Because the exam hasn't happened yet. I do not know whether the exam will go well or not, but I'm still worrying about that, and it has gone to a level that it has become really irrational for me to worry about it in a really intense manner. So that is the difference between anxiety and fear. And when we talk about fear of failure, it is more specifically about the kind of fear that we sometimes face when we have to do something that is challenging to us. And in those cases, sometimes our mental beliefs or our emotional states, they tend to block our actions, and that kind of leads us into inaction sometimes. And surprisingly, you'll also see in certain cases it also leads to overworking in some patients. I'm sorry, in some clients. But before moving ahead, let me just talk about fear of failure a little bit more. So, fear of failure is nothing but an irrational fear of failing in personal endeavors. And while no one likes to fail, but for some people, the fear of failure is so intense that it can impact their daily lives and their ability to complete tasks. Uh, People with fear of failure, they may internalize the failure and view it as as a reflection of their worth. So, fear of failure has its strength from the fact, not just because, okay, like we might fail, and that the failure in itself does not have so much potency, uh, but the fact that we tend to internalize it, that okay, if I have failed, that means I am a failure. This kind of equalization that happens in our mind, this creates the fear of failure. So if this equalization was not there, that if I failed in xyz, that means I'm a failure. If this was not there in our mind, the fear of failure would not be there. So as a child, if you see that children try so many new things and they fail repeatedly, but they do not but they do not have that fear of failure because they haven't internalized those failures yet. So that is the difference between just a simple failure and what a fear of failure is. So uh, so internalizing their fears, and making it a reflection of their worth, this causes people to see failure as a constant threat to them, and this makes it a fear, and it makes us to feel embarrassment, as well as it makes us believe that others will view us negatively. And this is something that we actually commonly see in fear of failure as well. And some of the things that you'll commonly that you can see in your clients or even people around you who are facing fear of failure, one would be that they'll talk about not having skills or not having enough knowledge to achieve something. So I've observed my clients that they often say, okay, I want to do this, like I want to take up this project, but I don't think that I'll be able to do it because I do not have xyz skills. And similarly, people might feel that they'll not be able to achieve their goals. And another thing that I've seen commonly is that they tend to tell people that okay, I'll anyway fail in it, so just so that the expectations that people have from them, that can be kept low. So they always they always tell it in advance that okay, I'll probably fail in this, so it's fine, like I was anyway not not invested in this so much. So these are certain key signs that kind of indicate to us that okay, there might be a sense of fear of failure that this person is dealing with, and this needs to be addressed. So I'll talk about two major manifestations in which fear of failure often happens. And this is for the first is chronic procrastination, and second is overindulgence in work. So, starting with chronic procrastination. So, naturally, if you imagine somebody who's fearful of failure, who thinks that okay, if I fail, it's a very devastating event for me, and that it will create embarrassment for me, or it will bring shame to me. So, in that case, you'll naturally imagine that this person would be fearful of taking new projects. They would procrastinate on their work just because this fear of failure is so potent for them that it blocks their actions. So chronic procrastination is a very natural response to fear of failure. And this is something that I've seen very commonly in my private practice as well, that people who have fear of failure, especially people who tend to burn out easily, they tend to have this chronic procrastination as a problem that they generally face. Now, coming to the second one, which is a little more surprising for people. So, the second manifestation of fear of failure is that they tend to overwork or overindulge in their work. So let me just explain how this happens, and what is the psychological process behind it. So for a person who's fear of failure, the second type of response, apart from chronic procrastination, the second type of response that this person might have is, okay, if I'm full of failing, then what do I need to do in order to not fail? It means that I need to work hard. So this person, what they'll do, they'll overcompensate for their fear by working so much that they bring themselves to a burnout. So people who are who have so much focus on their work or so much focus on their careers, that they're missing out on other areas of their life, especially their health and relationships. These are the two biggest areas that takes a hit when people tend to overcompensate for their fear of failure with their work. So these are the two manifestations in which fear of failure commonly happens. And while chronic procrastination is something that naturally comes to us, that we can logically make sense that okay, if somebody has a fear of failure, they'll tend to avoid the work that is creating that fear. But apart from that, there's another manifestation which is the which is excessive indulgence in their work, which is very common but is often misdiagnosed, or not even something that is like people don't even consider it as a problem. So it remains underdiagnosed a lot of times. But as psychologists and as psychology students, we must recognize that these are the two major manifestations, and whenever we see our clients facing these two challenges, we must address them head on. So let me begin with now let me talk about the causes of fear of failure. And so first of all, as the first cause that creates this fear of failure, it is critical upbringing. So as children, what happens a lot of times, our parents or our caregivers, they have such huge expectations from us, that we tend to internalize all these expectations, and over time we kind of associate our self-worth with fulfillment of these expectations. So let's say if as a child my father if my father wanted me to, let's say, to get an A plus in my second class subject or something, or an exam or anything. So if I'm able to meet his expectations, that means I'm a good girl. But if I'm not able to meet this expectation, that means I'm a bad girl. So this kind of associations, they tend to create early in life. And when these kinds of when these expectations get so solidified that they become a part of our identity, that becomes a problem. And uh, that kind of buries the seed for fear of failure in life in general. The second cause that brings about fear of failure is perfectionism. And this is by the way, this is something that even I face a lot. Being somebody who wants everything to be perfect, because just because I'm doing something, I want something that it should be as good as it can be. That kind of creates a lot of sense of failure, a lot of fear of failure for even for me, as even as while working as a psychologist also, I tend to face this problem very often. So I'll just give you a very recent example of how perfectionism in me led to fear of failure, and it kind of like stopped me from doing the task that I was supposed to do. So I was supposed to be creating an Instagram post, and I wanted that post to be so perfect. I wanted it to, to be something that, okay, that this should capture the my audience interest, and that this should capture the I should get some engagement out of this. And because of this, I created this post like 1 week ago, and I was like, continuously editing it, and but I was just not able to take that step of posting it on my social media. And this was just because I was so I was so not ready to have a average kind of a post on my social media feed, and that was creating a lot of trouble for me. So what I so this is a very small but a very crucial example of how perfectionism can lead to fear of failure, and how it can stop us from doing the smallest things that we have to do, but we tend to ignore just because we want to be a perfectionist, that we want something, that whatever is going in my name should have a certain level of perfection, that it should have a certain level of refinement. So perfectionism is another cause of why we tend to experience fear of failure. The next is, of course, societal pressures. And this comes with age as well. As psychologists, you would have heard about the term developmental tasks. That with age, you are supposed to do certain tasks that are age appropriate, and they are like the milestones for your life. So if you're unable to fulfill them, or if you if you're if for whatever reason, if you're not able to fulfill them in the specified time that the society kind of creates, then it creates a certain negative connotations for us. So for example, that people often believe that, okay, like you should have your career before you're 25, or before you turn 30. So this is a certain societal expectation that is there. And when people after crossing 25 generally, but even for some people even after crossing 30, if for whatever reason, if they do not have a stable career, that creates a lot of anxiety within them. So this kind of societal expectations and societal pressures, they also create a sense of fear of failure in prospective terms. So that by this I mean that if I know that okay, with all the efforts that I might put in, I might still not be able to have a stable career by the age that I turn 30, let's say. So that is creating a fear in me now. So this is another way of how societal pressures create a sense of fear of failure within us. The next is high personal expectations. So oftentimes, more than the society's expectations, it is our very own expectations that tend to derail us from our own for our own good. So having unnecessarily high expectations is again something that I've observed in my counseling practice a lot, that people who people tend to have very high expectations of themselves, and they either tend to burn out very easily, or they end up having a fear of failure just because they have certain expectations and they fear that if I'm not able to fulfill these expectations, this will cause a problem for me. So if I just discuss one case that I had, so this person wanted to become indispensable for their team, for the office that they were working in. They wanted to become indispensable. So, and this is a very very high expectation of to have for yourself. Even if you're like the best person on earth to do a particular job, you should still not have this expectation that you should become indispensable. After all, you're working in an office with a team of people, and when you're working in a team of people, you're supposed like the team is supposed to support you. And if you're the only person who's working and who's doing all the work, then as a group leader, that team has failed, right? So similarly, when we have very irrationally high expectations of ourselves, that is a short recipe to experience fear of failure in our lives. So I'll just repeat the causes of fear of failure once again. The first one was critical upbringing, or our parents having extremely high expectations of us, and then we tend to internalize them and associate our own self-image and our own identity with how we are fulfilling others' expectations. The second is perfectionism. Third is societal pressures, and fourth is unnecessarily high expectations of our own selves. And now let's move on to how we can help our clients deal with the fear of failure. So, as a general therapy practice, first of all, we need to identify that okay, this is a problem that is there. The client may themselves not come to you and tell you, okay, I have a fear of failure. But we, as psychologists and psychology students, we need to identify, okay, like this is the problem that is there, and we need to address this. So for that, in the initial part of the webinar itself, I told you about two manifestations about how fear of failure kind of manifests itself in clients. One is chronic procrastination, and the second one was overindulgence in work. So when you see these two patterns happening for your clients, that is an indication that there's a fear of failure that you need to work with, and this is something that you might need to eventually deal with your client. So the second process, so first is identifying the problem itself. The second is delayering the problem. So behind every behavior, or in fact like the lack of behavior, there's a certain intent that we have. So different therapy models have different delayering techniques. At iChas, we learn several delayering techniques like EFT, EET, or correctional therapy, and they kind of help us to delayer the problem and understand what are the underlying causes of why this fear of failure is happening. So we learned about the causes earlier, but for the client that is sitting right in front of you, what is their cause of fear of failure? So to understand that, we need to delay that fear of failure and understand it, to bring it to the core of what was the main issue that they were dealing with. So these could be either thought, any thought, irrational thought, like these equalization statements, like if I fail at XYZ, that means I'm a failure. So this is a thought or a belief that that I as a client is holding, which is causing that fear of failure. So if the delayering process comes like boils down to this particular thought, that means that the psychologist needs to help me redefine this thought and make it more aligned with and make it more aligned to my core identity, rather than having these kinds of equalization beliefs. Secondly, these could be even about a certain emotion or a memory or a certain emotion or a certain mental state that might be that this fear of failure might bring us down to. In that case, the psychologist is supposed to help me deal with that emotional state, and preferably replace that emotional state with other better coping mechanisms. And the third possibility is that it can bring us down to a certain memory. So since we talked about how childhood experiences can also can bring about a certain fear of failure within us. So in that sense, it can even bring this delayering process can even bring us down to a past memory, which might be creating certain pressures within us. And once that memory has been integrated well within our system of a psychological system, that helps us to overcome this fear of failure. So the second process is delayering, and every therapeutic process that you have learned or that you want to learn, each of them will have a different delayering process. And once you have delayered the process and you have come to the core issue, then you address the core issue. So like I told you about thought restructuring, that if there's a thought or a belief that is creating the sense of fear of failure, then you need to restructure that thought. So restructuring a thought about if I fail in XYZ, that means I'm a failure. If I have to restructure it, it might look like something that if okay, even if I fail in XYZ, even if I fail in XYZ, that still means that I'm a good person, let's say. So this means that if, failure or success in XYZ task has no impact on my self identity. So creating these kinds of thought restructuring processes is something that is the third step. And then uh, after we have done all of this, we need to create certain insight, and we need to ensure that all the client's personality as a whole is integrated, and that they are now ready to take steps and overcome the fear of failure that they have. So these are the four steps that we deal with, that we take when we're dealing with clients who have fear of failure. And if you're trained in certain therapy modules, you'll probably be better able to understand what I'm talking about. But as a as a layperson, if I just have to explain it once again, so first is that you identify the problem, that this person is the client in front of me is facing fear of failure. The second is that you delayer that problem and you come to the core issue of why this person is facing this fear of failure. Once you know the why, then you treat the why. So just like, okay, like certain person is facing fever, and somebody like fever and few more symptoms. So you run a diagnostic test, and then you come to the conclusion, okay, this person has malaria or dengue or whatever, and now you're treating them for that particular disease. So similarly, in the second process, we delayed the problem, and the third, we are now treating the problem with a specific tool that will help us to help our clients deal with the core issue. And once all of this has happened, we help the client to integrate their experience and to have a more solid self identity, so that they do not have to rely on success or failure of their of the things that they're doing to feel good about themselves. So this is the entire process of how we do it. At IHRs, we have specific techniques that we do. But in like even if you're trained in some other therapy, let's say CBT, you'll have your own set of tools to deal with these issues. And yeah, so this was more about how to deal with fear of failure. And if there's any questions, then you can probably write in the live. And if not, then I'll give over to Kiranji and she'll take over.
Thank you so much, Vedangi. This was really very insightful. At times, we do not realize that procrastination might be a fear of failure.
Right.
And yeah, this was really good, and this will help, I think, a lot of us to help our clients going forward from here.
Right.
So I'd like to thank Vedangi for taking up this topic, which at times we kind of overlook.
Hmm.
We don't understand procrastination. We are thinking of procrastination, treating procrastination, but then we don't realize
Right.
what the core issue behind that might be. So thank you, Vedangi. And we'd also like to thank Career Naksha, our collaborators, for the webinar. For courses of ICHAs, you can go to the Institute of clinicalhypnosis.com. For Career Naksha courses, which are career related, and assessments, you can go to careernaksha.com. And psychology students, for the subsidiary therapy drive, visit mhp.com. You have all the psychologists there. You can book your calendars there. The first discovery session is free for you, and the rest of the sessions are at a really subsidized rate, only for the psychology students. And thank you once again, Vedangi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.